Alrighty. Well, as Holly had said, I'm James Fitterlick, and I'm the lead developer on the OpenTBL project. For those of you that may have heard of or used ThinkSpace, we're the same team that does that. You know, as Megan had noted, this was originally betaed over the summer course or summer term periods. And moving into fall, we have quite a larger number of courses on. Offhand, I think somewhere around like 15 to 20 courses are using it at this point. It does support both peer evaluations and readiness assurance tests, and we hope to have the application exercise piece coming, probably sometime in, probably looking towards like a spring 2018 or something like that. So don't expect application exercises in this semester, but that is on our roadmap. That is kind of one of our major pieces kind of moving forward. And just to kind of preface it a little bit further, this is designed to support both asynchronous online classes as well as face-to-face, in-person, and things like that. And I'll kind of show you this later on, but it is designed to work on tablets and phones and desktops and laptops and pretty much anything that the students would have in a classroom. We do not have a native application on phones or anything like that, so it is still a website, but I'll show you later how it does tailor to the phone screen size and everything like that. So the first thing I'm going to do is go ahead and sign in with one of my instructor accounts. The first thing that we're going to see is a list of what we call the spaces, and spaces in this system are effectively analogous to a course. So you can see Megan's Summer 2017 HDFS 227, and we've made a number of test spaces. And for this particular demo, I'm going to go ahead and look at the demo space that I've set up. So again, just consider it a course. Typically, we see one space per course per section is usually what it ends up kind of boiling down to. Some people do it slightly differently than that, just kind of based on the particular needs. But for all intents and purposes, a space is a course. And so from here, I've clicked down into the actual space, and now we get to see the list of exercises. So from this point, I can see that I have some readiness assurance exercises that I've made, and I can see some of the draft and testing ones that we've used. And I'll briefly show kind of how it looks from the instructor side to actually build out one of these readiness assurance tests. And I'll keep this brief because it's relatively straightforward. But once we've created our course, we can go in and add an exercise. And from here, we're prompted to say, do you want to make a peer eval or readiness assurance? So this is where we, eventually we'll hope to have application exercise here. That'll be kind of the third option. But for now, we're working with readiness assurance or the peer eval. And so I'm going to go ahead and create just a quick readiness assurance test just to kind of show you what it looks like from the building side. So for the first thing that we do is we essentially just give it a title, and then we can have some instructions here for the students. From there, we give our IRAT and our TRAT a title. And that's pretty much it for the details tab. The bulk of it comes on the next step, which will be the content. And so when we first start off, we'll have a blank readiness assurance test. We will be supporting things like templates and things soon for the readiness assurance side that's already implemented for the peer eval. And basically the intent there is for carrying from section to section or from semester to semester, we want that to be a one-click process. So you'll be able to take effectively your entire course from this semester. If you're teaching it the following semester, one button press, it'll copy everything over for you, and you'll be good to go. But for this case, I'm just going to show you quickly what it looks like for the blank readiness assurance test. We effectively just give it a label. We set the correct choice. We can have as many choices as we want, or we can reduce it down to, for example, like a true, false, or something like that. So you can have any number of answer choices that you would like for these questions, and you can have as many questions as you would like for these as well. And one of the common questions that we get here is, a lot of instructors want to use an image or something like that. So for right now, we're just supporting text. Pretty quickly in the future, we'll be supporting things like having images. So for medical, they'll typically have an image and say, the section that's highlighted, what is this, or something along those lines. So we will be kind of expanding the capabilities of what you can do in the label for each of those questions. Other than that, kind of stepping through, it just gets into the logistics and kind of some of the settings. So these are our scoring type of options. how many points per question do you want that if at functionality on? So this would be sort of similar to your scratch cards that you might have used before. And I'll show you what this looks like from the student side here in a little bit. I see a question in chat about LaTeX. That is on the roadmap, Anna. We will support that once the same time we release the image stuff, we will support things like equations and all of those functionalities as well. So not at this point, but we will in the future. So here we have our if-at options, whether you want to do that type of functionality, and we have kind of a custom one called justifications, and I'll show you how that works. But ultimately, it just results in some of the logistics stuff. Release date, due date for your IRAT, release date, due date for your TRAT. So I'll just throw some random dates in. And as we move forward, the last step here will be the confirmation step, where we just get an overview of everything that we did, and we can finish the actual exercise. From there, your exercise is placed into a draft mode. And you can effectively just make it live now, and it will be available to your students at that point. So in order to get a readiness assurance test in the system, you'll go through basically that build process. You'll create it, puts it into draft mode, and then you'll activate it. And activation, once it's active or the case is live, the students will have access to it based on the release date and due dates and the parameters that you would set kind of during the building process.
But James, did you, I guess, on the last screen, was there a release date? So like if I was teaching out on my class, I could set this up like a week beforehand, and I know that it was released, you know, at midnight on a Tuesday.
Yeah, so there's a release and a due date for both the IRAT and the TRAT piece. Okay. And that will be basically, in this case, the students won't see it until September 6th at midnight, and the TRAT will be, you know, September 5th at midnight. Obviously, that doesn't make sense, but yes, so there is a release date for both the IRAT and the TRAT piece. They can release at different times, be due at different times, and things like that. Okay. But other than that, again, that was just kind of the building process. Now I'll kind of show you what it looks like from a usage process, especially in kind of a face-to-face course, what to expect. We do a lot of real-time analytics to kind of help you in your kind of clarification lecture or the follow-up piece. Go ahead and set that draft. And from here, I'm going to go into just one of the first kind of demos that we've set up. And Jose is on my team here, and so he's going to actually fill out some of the data, and we'll get to see what that looks like from the instructor view. So as an instructor, for all the readiness assurance tests, I'll have the option to go into the progress report section. And this is kind of the administrative kind of dashboard or overview of where a lot of this stuff will, where a lot of the analytics pieces will come in, and where we can see a lot of the metadata kind of about what the students are taking and sort of interpreting their progress. And so I'm going to go ahead and sign in as a student here as well. Let me get that signed in. I'm doing this on another monitor because I want to show you what the instructor side looks like as we do this kind of in real time. Okay. All right, so I'm going to first take a look at the IRAT. And so again, this is what you're viewing is the instructor view of the IRAT. This is again what we call the progress report. And so in this, we can see that there's a couple of these questions that have already been marked, but when I go through, let's go ahead and mark another one. So I just marked on my other monitor as a student. I had selected this option B here, and we can see that 2 students have responded, and it kind of shows us in real time where all of the choices are coming in. So as we, you know, if you're watching in a face-to-face class, we've seen this happen where an instructor would use like an iPad, walk around the classroom or something like that. This gives you kind of your real-time feedback as to, you know, which choices are being selected most frequently, whether they're correct, whether they're wrong, to kind of help decide, you know, for this case, you know, question 1 had nobody selected the right answer. That's probably a piece to look at for kind of our clarification as we move forward in the course. So all of this, again, happens in real time. So I'm just going through and selecting some kind of random answers, and it will kind of break down that way. And we can drill down into each of these questions to see which specific, since again, this is our IRAT, which specific students chose which of the responses. So that can help you get an indication of kind of who to ask for their explanation on something like that. We got a question in chat here. Does every student need a device in order to respond? For the IRAT piece, every student will need a device in order to respond. For the TRAT piece, you could have one person per team with the device to respond that way. So short answer there is kind of a yes and no, depending upon if you're looking at the IRAT or the TRAT. So again, we've kind of drilled down, so we can do this for each of the questions. We can see which of the students had responded, which of the answers. And additionally, we can see their justification for their answer if you have that setting enabled. And so this is to kind of let you get a little bit of a preview into their mind before, as this is happening, you can just quickly read their justification if you have that setting enabled, just to get an idea of why they chose what they did kind of for that particular choice. From here, that's pretty much it from the progress reports. I mean, again, it's just an overview. It's all real time in the sense of, again, it's happening as it happens in your class. And it just gives you some data that will hopefully help you to guide the clarification of the follow-up piece. As we can see, Jose here is kind of switching his answer around. And this is an IRAT, so you are able to switch your answers around until you submit it. Once you submit it, they're locked out from changes at that point. And so we can see all of that kind of happen in real time.
James?
Yes.
Is it possible to see the student view?
Sorry, could you say that again?
Is it possible to see the student view?
Yeah. So this is what it looks like from the student view. So this is the IRAT, and effectively we have our justification boxes here. Again, this is a setting; these don't need to be here. But otherwise, this is what it will look like. Just shows the kind of the question labels. You can select your choices however you would like, and eventually there's a submit button down at the bottom. And everything is designed to be accessible, so you can use your keyboard. So it does kind of adhere to accessibility standards and that kind of stuff. But this is what you'll see for the IRAT. And I'll show you what the TRAT looks like here in a little bit. The TRAT's a little bit different because there's a little bit more kind of group functionality that goes on. But effectively, it's just a multiple choice kind of form. Nothing too fancy about it at this point.
James, now, say you're in a face-to-face class, and you only want there to be a certain amount of time for students to take the IRAT. Can you shut it down in a face-to-face class? Not presently. We do have timers working on kind of our development build, but that's not available to the instructors yet. So timers are kind of a technically tricky problem, so we're trying to make sure that it's smooth before we release it. But kind of to give you an idea of what will be available are things like you could set a 15-minute timer. If you're doing face-to-face, we'll give you a timer screen as well to show up on a projector or something like that. When those 15 minutes are up, it will automatically kind of close out that IRAT, and then you'll have the option to transition them to the TRAT or do a couple of other steps based on how you want it to. Basically, what happens when the timer ends. You have a couple of different options there. So that's a work in progress, not available now, but will be available probably by spring for the timer piece. And so, and also, you obviously know that I want a timer for the IRAT for an online asynchronous class. Is that kind of the same function, or are you going to have to do a whole separate timer deal for that?
So that will be sort of the whole separate timer thing, but not really. So it will share the underlying kind of timer code, if you will, but it has to work a little bit differently. So in the face-to-face class, you're setting one timer that all of the course is kind of adhering to, which is a little bit different than starting a new timer every time somebody starts that particular exercise. So we do plan to support that as well, but that one will be coming after we do the kind of class-wide timer for the face-to-face. We don't really have an ETA on that, but it is on the roadmap kind of listed under our timer section. So it's something we're paying attention to, but we don't have anything super concrete on that at this point, Megan.
Okay.
Okay, so this is, basically, again, this was just our IRAT. So I'm going to go ahead and take a look at the progress report, which, again, is kind of the Instructor Dashboard for the TRAT, which will look relatively similar with a couple of different twists here. Because for the first piece of this, we do have that if-at, that immediate feedback type of functionality added or enabled for this particular TRAT. And I'll kind of show you what that looks like. So I'm going to go ahead and sign in as a student on the same team as Jose this time, and he will be our kind of our team leader. and he will mark some responses for us, and we'll see what that looks like. So I'm going to first start off by showing you the student view, which again looks relatively similar in the sense of we have our multiple choice, we have our justifications, but there's a couple of different things that we have when we're logged in as the TRAT piece. First and foremost, again, in a face-to-face setting, this isn't super useful. This is more of the asynchronous piece, but we can see which students are actively logged into the system at that point in time. So you can kind of think of this as your kind of a Google Doc, if you're familiar, where it shows the people who are actively accessing it. That's kind of the purpose here. Again, for face-to-face, not ultimately that useful, since it's you can just look across the table. But that is there for the asynchronous piece. And one of the other functionalities we have, which again is more of an asynchronous piece, is a chat type of functionality. And this is works similarly to Google Chat. So Jose just typed a message, and I can agree. And this is something that the instructor will be able to see as well. So again, not super useful for face-to-face, but it's more geared toward that asynchronous usage.
And how long does the chat stay? For the beta, it was like 2 weeks or something?
The chat will be permanent, effectively. It's a full archive of all the chat. So both the students and the instructors can go back to the end of the semester. They can go back to the very first exercise they ever did and take a look and things like that. And just to kind of show this kind of team scribe concept, we can see that Jose has started to type into this justification. His student is named Lauren here. And so it prevents me from making any changes. So this is kind of to support that collaborative sense. So if multiple students are logged in, that's totally fine. So kind of going back to one of the questions where you can have either one student with a device for this TRAT piece, or you can have all the students, or any number of them could be logged in, and it should work totally fine. But from here, we'll have Jose go ahead and start to mark some answers. So he got it right on the first try, so we don't get to see the if at totally in progress here, but we can see that we got it correct in the first try. This question is locked out. So if we go down to number 2, let's see if he can get it wrong the first time, so we can see some of the that if at type of stuff kind of happen. Just guess. There we go. So in this case, he had marked it wrong. And again, this is happening real time on my PC. This would happen real time on his. So as we go through, you get to see that immediate feedback happen. So it will mark them with that red X kind of as we go through until we get eventually the correct answer. And the scoring rules for these are all set up by the instructor. So you can deduct any number of points per wrong answer and things like that. So you can kind of customize what the particular end result would be for the score. But otherwise, in a nutshell, this is the TRAT piece. The non-if-at version looks very similar to the IRAT versus this is our if-at type of style where we get that immediate feedback kind of as we go through. And if we take a look over at the instructor side now, so this is that progress report, that Instructor Dashboard, we again get kind of a similar at a glance for each of the questions. And since this is an if-at, it's a little bit different. So if we think of the IRAT, it's a little bit easier to kind of parse because we can basically say 50% of your class chose B, 30% chose C, 20% chose D. Whereas in the if-at, since in theory every student ends up with the right answer, or every team rather ends up with the right answer, we look at it as how many attempts did it take for that team to get it correct. So in the case for question 1, 100% of the teams got it correct on their first try. So that question is probably great. Versus on question 2, 100% of our teams took 4 attempts to do it. And we can drill down into it a little bit as well. But effectively, again, that's what we're looking at. It's just how many attempts did it take on average per team to get that correct answer. And you can kind of see, if we had more teams in the system, you would be able to see what the most often chose incorrect answer was and things like that. So you can help to, again, kind of guide that clarification piece. And if you are using the chat functionality, you can also see, what the students have been typing, and this is also in real time. But again, that's probably not super useful for that face-to-face piece. So in a nutshell, that's kind of how the IRATs and the TRATs work. And just to add some kind of other notes to it, as of now, the IRAT and the TRATs will be exactly the same. So when you go into the builder, you build out your readiness assurance test, both the IRAT and the TRAT will be identical. We've heard a lot of faculty who like to make their TRATs a little bit more difficult, basically implying that their IRAT and TRAT do differ. So we're looking at that functionality in the future. So if that is kind of a use case that you do where you're using a different TRAT related to the same kind of IRAT, that will be something that we hope to support, kind of as we move forward. But that's not implemented as of now. And then kind of the last, instructor side of things is all of the data is downloadable through CSV. So this gives you your IRAT scores and your TRAT scores. And so that's how you can kind of interface with your grades. And we are working with Iowa State right now. Holly might actually know more about this than I do at this point, but we have put in the request to integrate OpenTBL into Canvas. So you will be able to, in Canvas, if you're using Blackboard, this will be after your grace period. But in Canvas, you can add an assignment into your Canvas course, and you can link that directly to an OpenTBL assignment. The students won't have to have any invitations or anything like that. They'll just be automatically into the system. And from that point, it should be a pretty smooth process of getting your students in. So I guess, first of all, that was kind of just an overview of the RAP, what it looks like from the student side and the instructor side. Again, we're giving you all of that data in real time for the face-to-face usage. Timers will be coming, hopefully in spring. So we have some of those kind of other pieces still in the works. And kind of the last thing that I wanted to show was just the team portion of it. So one of the important pieces for formulating TBL courses is to actually construct your teams. And so I wanted to quickly show you what our team builder looked like and how that process will look. And so in this case, I've already created some of the teams. This is what we were demoing with. But what it looks like is you just get a table of your roster, and you can simply just mark students, and you can either create a new team with the students you've marked or add them to an existing team, and just go from there. So if we wanted Devin and a different Jose to be on a new team, we can go ahead and make that, and we can assign them a color. Let's do antique bronze, I guess. And if we go back to our team view, now we can see that we have our new team kind of set up. And so one of the things that I want to point out is we've been working with peer eval and team-based software for quite a while, and we know that there are things that happen in the classroom that some other software doesn't really handle well. For example, student drops, student adds late, how do those things happen? We've tried to handle all of that for you on the technical side. In effect, all you need to do is just go add them to the team or remove them from the team or swap the two students around in the right teams, and everything else should be kind of reconciled on the technical end. So there shouldn't be any issues. This is typically more of a problem with peer evaluations than it is for the readiness assurance stuff. But the bottom line is, we've tried to handle a lot of those kind of practical things that come up in the classroom to make it just pretty streamlined from the instructor side of the table. So to get all of this kind of working, basically the flow will be, you would create your course in OpenTBL. You'll upload a roster CSV. That gives you this table here. Once you've done or formed your teams in the classroom, you'll just set them up in the system. Then you just have to build out your readiness assurance tests, and you're pretty much good to go. If you do change your teams mid-semester, it does not impact the old readiness assurance tests. Those are all kind of archived as they were in that point in time. So if I'm on Jose's team now, we've already taken a RAT. I'm still on his team for that one if the instructor goes back and looks at it, versus for all future readiness assurance tests, I will be on a different team or wherever I was kind of reassigned. So there is no data loss in that sense that goes on. Everything is archived that you can kind of carry through your TBL life cycle. So
I have a question. Remind me, they only need one login to ThinkSpace in this. So once they're logged into ThinkSpace, then they can use it.
Correct. Yes. Yeah. It shares a login with ThinkSpace. ThinkSpace and OpenTBL, we consider them kind of sister products, or they're all in the ThinkSpace family is kind of how we would refer to it as. So if you or your students have a ThinkSpace account, they already have an OpenTBL account, and they're good to go. And then in the future, once we get that process through Iowa State where we get added to Canvas, then they won't even need to explicitly have a ThinkSpace or ThinkSpace or OpenTBL account. They will just be able to use their net ID, and it's kind of like a single sign-on type of solution from that point on for them. So we're really excited to get that process through Iowa State just to simplify a lot of this. But short answer is yes, if they have a ThinkSpace, they already have an OpenTBL account.
I have another question. If you make in ThinkSpace, can you basically transfer those exact same
No. So there is no kind of communication cross system at this point. Basically, OpenTBL is kind of a standalone, kind of dedicated to TBL, versus ThinkSpace has a lot of things that go on under the hood that makes that kind of complex. So it's difficult to, there are, for example, veterinary cases that have team collaboration in ThinkSpace that could be imported into here, but that causes a nightmare on the technical side. So we had to make a choice early on and said, no, these are separate systems. So they will have to just have separate teams and rosters and things. When you upload the roster, basically kind of the technical process that sort of translated is we will look at your roster and then we will basically look to see if that student already is in the system. And if they're not, then we send out an invitation saying, click here to sign up to complete your account. If they are in the system, they said that it changes the message slightly and just says, go here, here's your course, you've been added, go here to log in. So if they have an existing account or they don't, in either case, they get notified immediately.
And so then my question is, since I haven't released, I'm still in instructor-only mode while I'm editing, doing the final edits for the peer eval, what are the students going to see? Like, they're not going to be able to get into that space until or they can get into the space, but they won't be able to access peer evaluation number 1 until the settings say it's been released. Is that correct? So what are they going to see once they're invited into OpenTBL?
They will see this, a derivative of this, I should say. So they do have access to your space because you're inviting them to that space, but they will not see any exercises that are not released, and instead we'll display a message that looks something along, this is the instructor view, so it has the subtext of, click on new exercise to create one. But effectively the student side is very similar. Looks like there are no exercises yet. You'll see them as they're released or something. I can't remember what it says offhand, but something along those lines. And just to kind of, clarify that everything in the system is subject to the release date, basically. So the students just don't ever see it until that release date hits. We might add the option in the future for students to be able to see it early, but I guess I need to be careful about my verbiage here, to be able to see that an assignment or an exercise is upcoming, but not access it until the date hits. So that would be kind of like a timeline functionality is what we're classifying that as. But right now, they just don't see anything until that exercise is released. But in the future, we might tweak that. But the bottom line is no student will be able to access, enter data, see questions, or anything until that release date hits, no matter what we do with it.
Question for you, James. So if in the spring semester I'll do 227 online again, but if there's not a timer on the iRAT, then I'll probably want to do that in Canvas just like I did in Blackboard. Can I set it up on my own to just do a TRAT, or would you have to build it for me? Just for the kind of group to clarify, so Megan was using it for TRATs only, so we had to do some workarounds to get that to work over the summer beta period. The short answer for that, Megan, right now is we still would have to do that, but that is going to be something that we address kind of before spring. And so I guess, Megan, just to kind of clue you into how we did that, basically we just made the iRATs release like next year or something like that. So the students just never saw that iRAT exercise. And so you could still already do that by now that we have an explicit iRAT and TRAT kind of release date, due date. So you could effectively do that, but we do kind of want to make it a little bit more streamlined in the sense of, do you want an iRAT and a TRAT, or, we're not sure what the designs will look like, but we do want to streamline that process a little bit. So a student doesn't have to necessarily do the iRAT in order to access the TRAT. The access is just based off of the release dates, yes?
Correct, yes. But once we get that timer functionality added, that's where everything will start to kind of link up a little bit more closely. So an example could be after 15 minutes, go ahead and unlock the TRAT, or when the team submits their iRAT, when everybody on the team submits their iRAT, unlock the TRAT. So a lot of those are the things that we kind of have testing implementations of, just not fully fleshed out at this point. So you are correct in the sense of everything is basically release date, due date kind of restricted at this point. But as we move forward, we're trying to make those quite a bit more smooth in the sense of how you can access and unlock and those types of things. So we are, actively working on the, the timer process, things like that. But the big thing that we're working on is the application exercise. So our intent is to, for those of you that are familiar with ThinkSpace, our intent is to kind of bring in some of that case-like functionality into OpenTBL under the application exercise banner. So that'll give you some of those same functionalities that you might have seen in ThinkSpace, kind of repurposed into a TBL setting, cleaned up, and kind of going from there. So that'll let you capture student input. That'll let you do videos, whatever you want to do for that application exercise piece. We'll be able to support a lot of those functionalities. So once we have that, the goal is that we have everything for TBL kind of under one banner. I think it was Jay Newell who said it was TBL in a box or something along those lines is kind of what we're going for. So we're targeting that for kind of the spring type of time frame. But other than that, kind of what you saw today is ready now, with some of the caveats that I had noted. So thank you for taking a look here, and I will stop screen sharing at this point.